Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Lost in Translation show, where we explore history to help mankind understand what's happening today. I'm Simone, your host. Today, we're going to have two special guests, Roseanne and Karen. Our conversation will focus on using our skills and energy to bring about positive change in our communities. Regardless of who wins the political elections, our society will be going through dramatic changes over the next 10 years. We have unstable political conditions worldwide, ever-increasing wars, the instability of the American dollar, and the failed corrupt politicians who represent corporations and foreign interests over the U.S. population. People are not prepared for the changes these aforementioned problems are and will bring about in the near future, how the outcomes of these failed policies will dramatically affect their lives. Yet today, many people still look at their politicians and public servants to fix these problems and put our country back on track. Problems that have manifested since World War II and our country's decision to drop the gold standard in the early 1970s. Regardless of the continued failures, people still vote for the same politicians that created the problems in the first place. People often lament, what can the average person do to change the world? Some people feel defeated and others feel demoralized because these problems seem so unsurmountable. And I don't blame people for feeling this way. Almost 80% of the country feels we are headed in the wrong direction. But the question is, what can we do about it? Should we continue the same path supporting failed policies and failed politicians? Or should we act to bring about the change ourselves like the founding fathers envisioned? These are the options that are before us today. One must ask themselves, how has relying on politicians and the government been working for me, my neighbors, or my business? Today, many decisions and practices are mandated by state and federal governments. They often conflict with the best interests of the affected communities, creating more problems and few solutions. Our form of state rights has slowly been eroded. Originally, our government was designed to keep decisions close to home, with the assumption that the laws, taxation, and governmental practices would benefit the governed. Unfortunately, the overreach of the federal government, whose agents are implementing the globalist agenda, are using their power to adopt foreign ideologies and to collapse the American dollar. These policies are destroying our country. People nationwide must act to take the power back from the government and return themselves to a representative form of government. All of us have the ability to make a contribution and bring about positive change in our communities. Bring about change is the focus of our discussion today. My guests will offer some personal stories about how they use their professional skills, life experiences, and social networks to bring about positive change in their community and their state. Both of these ladies are contributing their time, knowledge, and passion to addressing our state's problems. Their goal is to help preserve the values that made this country great and create new opportunities for their children and grandchildren. Recently, I had the opportunity of traveling with Roseanne and Karen to Washington, D.C. as part of a nonpartisan group. We walked the halls of Congress the week of the budget vote. Our goal was to visit various offices to educate the congressional representatives and provide solutions to some problems that are facing California. It was a highly educational experience, observing how the federal government operates. It was also very interesting watching representatives from countries worldwide lobbying for funds the day before the budget vote. Today, we will share our experiences and offer some suggestions to our listeners of how to get involved and create the change they are currently relying on our failed politicians and governmental institutions to implement. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. And please go to my Rumble channel, Lost in Translation Show, one word, because sometimes I'm going to be putting up content that may not be YouTube friendly. I'll also be out on Spotify and Truth Social in the coming months, so please check me out there too. So hello, ladies, and welcome.
Hi. Hi. That was awesome, Simone. Thank you
Oh, well, you're
for
welcome.
that.
This
Well,
is
wonderfully, yeah.
I hope I was verbalizing your views too. After our many conversations, I felt like I was.
Yes, I
Absolutely.
agree. Absolutely.
All right, so let's get started, ladies. Why don't you go ahead, Roseanne, since you're the first one on the screen, and tell us a little bit about yourself and maybe your story on how you became an activist.
I have always been an active mom. I'm married to a serial entrepreneur and business person who traveled a ton. So my earlier days, I spent a ton of time doing all the mom stuff and was very active and involved with kids and kids activities, which led into school activism and promoting and or whatever for schools. I particularly like emergency preparedness because I think everyone needs to make sure that's taken care of in the schools, as well as so many other educational issues. The issues now in education are absolutely mind-blowing on particularly what they're doing in libraries and what have you. But the bottom line is I was really involved, and then I finally got my me time after I had my kids out of the house and what have you, and I manage property and do a lot of things that way. And for me, it really just ended up being just, talking to people around you. If you see something, you spot it, you got it. I've always been famous for that. And so I really like, if I see a problem, just jumping in. What prompted me to be an activist was really COVID. So that kind of helped me. And I think most people that I talk to that are new into the game, that really was an eye-opening experience. So I ended up just having someone call me one day after the COVID crazy. And I was calling a girlfriend. We were going to meet with their husband or have a, like hot date weekend, night out or something. And I asked if they were available, and she's like, no, we're state shopping. And I thought, state shopping, interesting. And I already knew, and California was in trouble. And her perfect description was that we think California is circling the drain and we want to look at options. And that prompted me to come home and share with my husband that, hey, we've been looking at this for a while. Do we think we need a backup plan? And he was like, no, we're not going to do a backup plan. We're going to stay put. We're in our last house. We're done. We're not going anywhere. And so really that prompted me to start looking at what I could do to make a difference in my area and get involved. So that's really, we're realizing that you're not going to fix your problems by running away from them. So many people, I'd say Karen and I have had this conversation before, that we know that left are now facing the exact same issues where they moved to. So my husband and I just decided we were going to, trench in and dig in and just work from here to fix our problems.
Well, us Californians are a pretty stubborn bunch, and a lot of people have left, and I don't blame them. Some people are on fixed incomes and that kind of thing, and they just can't afford to stay. Also, their children have transplanted to other places because there's business and growth opportunity and home affordability. But as we're looking at our whole nation as a whole, home affordability has become out of reach regardless of where you live, relating to inflation and the other things that are driving the economy and people's movement today.
Right.
And how about you, Karen?
Well, I am a wife, a mother, a daughter, aunt, and whatever comes with that, with the family members. But I'm also a small business owner, and like Roseanne's husband and Roseanne, understand what it takes to be a small business owner in not only California but in the United States. We both feel very strongly, and my husband's a small business owner as well, that the United States of America was founded on small business. And that's the way the founding fathers wanted it. And that's the way they came out here, was to do what their dreams were and not somebody else's. And so the way I got started was during 2 weeks to slow the spread. I'm a realtor. I am a contract employee. I don't really need to follow an employer's work rules because I am my own. I'm a contract employee. But when that started and everybody was panicking and standing in long lines to buy toilet paper, I just couldn't my brain couldn't wrap around the fact that our government was shutting all these small businesses down and was going to absolutely, in 2 weeks, I knew that all these businesses would be desperately hurting. I live in a smaller town in Northern California and know the importance of community and supporting local. And it just, from there, my brain just went and exploded, and I started seeing a ton of corruption. And then the 2020 election hit, and I just knew that there was just some desperate, fraudulent activity that had gone on. And I guess my final hit the wall, can't go on anymore until I'd make some changes, was when my county, which is one of the most liberal counties in California, and there are several, we know that, but they knew they couldn't do a digital vaccine passport, because we had already argued at the Board of Supervisors and at several of the largest cities in the county. But what they decided to do was to do a paper passport, vaccine passport, and you had to sign it. Your employer was instructed to pass it out and collect a piece of paper that you had to sign, whether you were vaccinated, and if you weren't, were you planning on it, and when were you going to do it? And if you said no, you were going to have to fill this form out every week. So my contract employer my broker put it on my desk, and I came in and I walked into his office and I said, do not ever put this on my desk again. I will not sign this. You can sign it for me, but I will not ever be signing it, because it's none of the county's business what I'm doing with my body. So then that just spurred it on to, I had to just start making some phone calls, and I stumbled upon a activist group that was starting to coordinate in another city in my county. And I actually got a hold of the person who was doing that. His name is, I don't mind sharing his name. He's a very nice gentleman. He's done a great job out here. His name is Alan Stevo. I don't know if anybody has heard his name, but he does a great job of teaching people how to coordinate. And so I started doing that, and it helped me to start getting involved with other people and getting active in what was resonating in my heart. And it just led, because once you start getting, all you need are two people, and then it'll grow to two more, to two more, to two more. And it just grew like that. And it's now in 2 counties, believe it or not, the way he coordinates, and it's just been extremely helpful. And that's where I started just getting involved with a bunch of different other individuals. We basically just started coordinating together. We all took jobs and we all started coordinating together, and that's how that worked. And it has been tremendous for this county.
Well, thank you for sharing. Do you want to share a little bit about our experience of going to Washington, D.C. before we get into some other topics? We were all there the week before the vote, so it was a very interesting time. So ladies, do you have any feedback or anything that you learned or could use as a motivational material to people who were thinking about getting involved?
Go ahead, Roseanne.
Oh, well, it just was an eye-opening experience to see, as you even mentioned in your introduction, the number of foreign agents, and many of them were actually living here in the US, but still and some had flown in. But they took the time out of their schedules, and it was important enough for them to be there. And yet we only bumped into a small handful of locals that were fighting for their causes. So to see the contrast of, foreign agencies really looking to get into our budget pocketbooks, and those active in the US that didn't seem to be around, it's kind of exactly what we're talking about, and that is activism. People just had become so apathetic about everything. Someone else will handle it, and that's really how we got into this whole mess. Is everybody else is handling it their way, and so I would say from all of our conversations that the three of us love the idea of what came before us in the founding of this Constitution and how it's important for us and that we all get involved and the actions that our founders took to actually, take the risk and go for it. So I really think it was such an eye-opening experience on seeing how few people were stepping up to get involved, and yet those who wanted handouts were right in the mix.
Well, and I
And
also noticed the people who wanted the handouts had the appointments with the legislative aides and the congressmen.
good point.
Whereas
Yes.
a lot of us they are trying to get appointments. American citizens were high because I was talking to the guys from the union, from the coal miners union. I walked up to a couple people I saw identified, they had their shirts on. You can usually see what group people are with that kind of identify themselves. And they have an issue where the state has stolen their pension and they are trying to get their leaders to figure out how they're going to get their money back. As you know, we've got a similar situation where some of the teachers' quote pensions have been raided by the Newsom and Brown. So this is a real issue. We also had people like Head Start that were out there that I saw. A lot of people, I guess there's some controversy about Head Start, but there really are a lot of children who are underprivileged, and in this program does benefit them. So it just seemed like they were wandering around the halls too, yet these people that represent foreign governments, and a lot of them are NGOs that are working against the United States interests. This is what you start to understand is these non-governmental agencies are being funded by our own government, and their goal is to bring us down. So it's a really confusing situation. I don't know, we all commented on this when you walk around the halls of Congress. You see they support this country, they support that country. There were some congressmen who had the fallen Afghani soldiers and a few things like that. But predominantly the allegiances on the front of the different congressmen's offices were to foreign countries and foreign people's movements. And this is what really stunned me. I didn't see one sign that had said increase home ownership. Increase education in the inner cities. I didn't see one sign that indicated that they were there for us. So that's what really shocked me. My sister had worked in the halls of Congress in the 90s, and I don't remember seeing anything like that. So it's a massive change, and our politicians openly serving foreign nationals' interest over our own. That was my primary takeaway, except the learning experience that we had on our own nonpartisan effort was the realization that we're really being sold out by the people that we put in place to supposedly protect us.
Exactly. I think I wouldn't believe it if you two had gone to DC and I wasn't there and you told me the story of who was there until I actually saw it. And it just, you both have said it, the fact that our own country is prioritizing foreign interests over the people of this country it's maddening. It's unbelievable. I feel like I'm a girlfriend who've been cheated on at this point. I mean, it's just unbelievable. And that if one of the groups that was there in massive numbers, I don't know if we want to share, if you want to share who I'm talking about, it's now coming out that those particular type of immigrants are now getting SSI benefits from the United States. And no wonder why they're coordinated. They know who they're going to. They know they already have their appointments. They were very serious. Nobody was smiling and joking around in those groups. We were trying to make friends and have fun. And I don't think we realized exactly what we had walked into. And then the other fact that you had young kids that were part of an immigration group, another immigration group in there, because they had a big wording on their shirt that said where they were from. I don't know if you guys remember seeing them. They were all over. And I think if people want to know the truth, you will find the truth. And it is hard to understand that our country is, I guess, being taken advantage of, or letting itself being taken advantage of by the people who are in office.
Well, those
And
people have been placed in office.
Exactly.
You're not
Thank
a
you for
school
saying.
teacher who all of a sudden gets $5 million from George Soros unless you're there for an agenda, or the Koch brothers on the other side. A lot of people just want to see this as a right-left paradigm. People, to understand what's really going on in our country, is they have to step out of the right-left paradigm, and they have to look at every situation. Both sides are selling us out. And if you notice, whenever the two parties meet, is the scariest thing possible. Let's think of weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. Let's think of the banking bailout. Let's think of the COVID situation. The only time they ever agree is when they're going to devastate us somehow. So I've learned over time, whenever these two groups get together, that we're seriously in trouble. And I think that's what's going on now. A lot of the people that we saw in the halls of Congress were members of countries that are hostile to us. Venezuela, for instance, we saw a lot of people from Venezuela. Of course, we've got wars going on in various countries, and we learn from different things that have occurred in scandals is that basically our politicians are funding foreign NGOs. We saw this through the Clintons. We saw this through Joe Biden. We saw this with Mitt Romney. We saw this with John McCain. Like I'm saying, it's on both sides. They're basically funding and giving foreign aid to countries that are in trouble. And 90% of that money stays in the United States to prop up the failing bank system. The other 10%, I mean, you can go to Zelensky, you can go to any place around, 90% of the money that's issued for foreign aid stays in our own banks and is put into the military industrial complex. So they get 10% of it, and they probably kick 5 to 6% of it back to our politicians once the money goes overseas. I was young and innocent when I first entered the political scene in my early 20s. I was actually working in Switzerland, and I was working in communist Russia at the time. And the older people were laughing at me because they felt like, oh, you don't think American politicians are stealing money? And they really opened my eyes, is that politicians are put in place, as we've discussed different times, and I've covered on my show, that actually Washington, D.C. is a foreign country, and it is ruled by the corporation that owns our country. That's a private corporation owned by the City of London bankers. So when you really understand these people don't represent us, they represent the interest of their foreign corporation and the bankers. As I've also pointed out, all wars are bankers' wars. If you don't believe that, on one side, we're giving the military in Israel the bombs to kill everybody in Palestine. And then on the other side, we're giving Palestine the money for food aid and medical aid. And who started Hamas? Israel and the United States back in the 1970s. So it's a vicious cycle of money laundering, foreign corruption, and basically the new world order being implemented worldwide. And this is why they're like P. Diddy right now and Jeffrey Epstein, these big scandals, the guy who did Abercrombie and Fitch, who was also groomed by Lex Wexner, Jeffrey Epstein's guy, he was just arrested for child trafficking. So these groups of people like P. Diddy and Jeffrey Epstein, are put in place to control our population, our politicians, and our CEOs, so they move us in this direction. They're not being led by our desire to be good leaders and do what's right for us. Predominantly, especially people who've been in power for a long time, are being controlled by blackmail, extortion, and the gravy train that they've been sucking on their entire careers. And as you see, many of these people, they all went to law school. Some of them can't articulate anything. That's why they went into politics, because they probably wouldn't have been good lawyers. So we really do have a big messed up beehive. And I'm not saying that everybody in DC is bad. That would be but anybody who's been there for any period of time understands what I just told you, that they work for a foreign corporation and not us. So this really kind of points out what's really going on in Washington, D.C. So ladies, I know that you talked a little bit about kind of what brought you into it. And what are your long-term goals do you see? Like, so today you're working on this particular thing. What is your strategy and what is your long-term goal and in the projects and communities that you're working in? Karen?
Well, my overall goal is to save California and to make it great again or back to where it was when I grew up. I have children. I hopefully, God willing, have grandchildren. And that is really what my focus is. It's all about the children. And we have allowed our government to be taken over. And I'm 100% a believer in the second paragraph of this Declaration of Independence, that when, you know, your government no longer is working for you, is working against you, it's our duty, it's our right, and to right this, the government and get it back to we the people. Right now we're top down, it's supposed to be bottom up, and we need to right this ship. And so I don't have an end point. I just need, I will not stop until we, the people, are back into the position where our founding fathers wrote for us to be in. And that's plain and simple. I mean, I don't think I could ever stop until that did happen. And even when that does happen, there's no more going back to the couch, you know, popping open a can of soda and kicking at my feet, just watching the TV. That's over with. That's done. So it's just who I am at this point. And that's what's my motivation is. Does that answer your question?
Well, I totally understand. And what a lot of people think that we're going to have new politicians in place, whether it's the right or the left, and that we're going to go through this dramatic change and that these one people are going to be able to assist us. It took us a long time to create all the problems that we've got, and a long time of ignoring reality and watching our games and doing our personal things and shoving all the responsibility onto people who don't have our best interest. I mean, politicians throughout history have been known. I worked and lived in communist Russia during the fall of communism, and I had a lot of young people working for me. I had over 200 people, probably under the age of 30. And they were constantly curious about our system. They loved Ronald Reagan. You wouldn't think that, but they thought he was a strong leader, and they hated communism too, so it brought it down. But I used to have this poster on the back of the office door, and it said, "Opportunity is dressed in coveralls and looks like no, opportunity is missed by most because it's dressed in coveralls and it looks like hard work." And they commented on that so many times, and they asked me to like translate what that really meant. But I think most of my viewers understand this is just the beginning of the change. If 100,000 people decided to go back to their local communities after they went to the Trump event or the Kamala event and went to their communities and tried to implement some of the change that they want, this is how we're going to see dramatic change. So it really is in the hands of people. So I'll let you continue on that, Roseanne.
Well, I agree with Karen. Just jump in. So I, I was starting at a very uneducated level, and you just need to talk to people. You need to start interacting with your city councils. You need to interact with the board of supervisors. And it doesn't take but more than a meeting or two to realize the absolute nonsense and uncommon sense, as they say. If common sense were so common, then it would be rampant, but it's not. But I mean, we are amazed at how many people will point out actual facts using the board of supervisors. So right now I'll just focus on, getting our locals to represent we the people rather than themselves. And people will point out facts. This hasn't been audited. This hasn't been audited. What about this? We've checked into this company and there's no head, there's no office. It says there are, 4 people on this and you're going to be giving them millions and millions of dollars. I mean, things that absolutely don't make sense, and they'll just instantly rubber stamp it. It's unreal. And as the more we learn about these regional boards that kind of predetermine the agenda and the plan, so they already know what's in place, and you start saying, this is our money, you represent us. And then talking to patriot warriors who've been in this for a little longer. So you start to educate yourself. As an example, I have a daughter who has not been involved and suddenly was visiting, and she kind of had an issue that seemed to make sense. It wasn't anything political. It was about listening to people complain on next door about why these coyotes are killing their pets. And logic says if you're in a native animal's territory, then you should probably use some respect to that animal and not just assume that, they need to get out of the way. So everyone will find their niche. It's not all going to be city and, state political issues. It could be for the animals. It can be for the children. There are so many issues right now happening to our children where they are literally trying to take our kids and just completely brainwash them and remove them from the influence of the family. And that cannot happen. That is, the core foundation of how the United States will continue to grow and carry on. If we don't have children that are seeing the vision and the dream that the founding fathers saw for us, then we're kind of for naught. So Karen, with all her comments about, for the children, that's really where it is. It's our children, grandchildren, next generations, the new people that want to come to this country for opportunity. I will tell you, and Karen can probably agree, that some of our best volunteers come from legal immigration or even just immigration. But the people who have seen the other side know that this is the land of opportunity, and it's been definitely bullied quite a bit. But at the same time, they know what's at stake if we don't win this, and they have hair on fire. And meanwhile, time to get up off the couch. And they're yelling at the Americans like, get off the couch, it's time. So I really believe that it's these people hopefully sharing their passion, that it's time for people to stand up and say their piece, no matter what side you're on, but at least be open to hearing and listening to both sides. And it has been such a delight. My husband and I are enjoying an oldest child who is finally starting to explore and, step into some of these arenas and say, wait, that doesn't make sense. Why would you not require voter ID? And she actually tested and presented my name as her, and they were ready to sign her up. So and has her hair on fire now. Why would you even not ask me for ID? Why would you not? I mean, people are starting to wake up that nonsense is happening, and it's time for people to realize that if we have to have ID for every single function of our lives, to say that it's racist to require it for voting is complete, utter nonsense. It's just, it's racist to say that people don't have proper ID because they're not smart enough to know how to get it when you need it for everything else. So I really think it's just fabulous to see people coming out of their quiet space and realizing it's time to stand up, or you're not going to have this country anymore. You're not going to have your opportunities. And when people start to have things affect them, that's when they start waking up. But COVID, I truly believe, was a huge wake-up call when people are like, wait, what? My body, my choice always, and suddenly now I've got to comply with this mandatory shot. That also doesn't make sense. So everyone will have their magic moment, and it's lovely to see so many starting to finally get that moment.
And that's so true. When I started talking about this 5 or 7 years ago, and I was coming from a perspective where I'd actually lived in communism in several places, been in countries that were collapsed by communism. So I was coming from a perspective of, hey, I'm actually telling you how it works. And people were so upset with me because it dispelled the mystery. And those same people have come back to me years later. Some have apologized. Some have just asked me for the information again. And when people do come to you and want help, we have to remember not to be proud and not to be frustrated. We have to just give the help because I saw a meme recently. It said, you don't believe you've been manipulated and brainwashed because you've been manipulated and brainwashed.
Exactly.
So I thought that really summed it up. I might put that in the end of the presentation here because it really does talk about that. So now, ladies, thank you for sharing your experiences. I think you've motivated a few people like us. We're just all regular people who want to show change in our communities. Is there any way people could get a hold of you or reach out to you if they wanted to find out more about the things going on in Karen or Roseanne's community, or they're both in small businesses, so you may want to reach out to their business?
Sure. How did you, do you want me just to say my email? I'm happy to give out my email. It's Karen, Karen, at Karen Ginkle, and I'll spell that for you. It's G as in girl, INKEL.com.
All right. And if you have a house you want to list, or if you have your house you want to buy, make sure Karen
Come on down. Yep. Give me a call. Give me a call. I go where my clients want me to go. So this is a big state. I can handle it. Thank you.
All right. And how about you, Roseanne?
Yes, I'm at Roseanne Dico, ROSEANNDICO @gmail.com. And I just encourage everyone to step in. I personally was not any sort of a speaker at all. A little nervous in the crowds. And I have actually decided, because some people are intimidated by going in front of a board or a city council and speaking. And I just decided that I was going to call that my Toastmasters boss class. So I have decided that I would train on them. And it's amazing how much better your skills become just by using your voice and learning how to assemble your statements. And once people start stepping in front of that microphone and realize that they can actually make an impact, and not necessarily, quite often, you never feel like you're making an impact to the people that are listening to you, because oftentimes they're not, but you do impact those around you. And indirectly, it goes back to the people sitting behind you, and you start getting under their skin, and they know. I came up with a phrase one time just watching the system, and I was like, they know we know, they know what we know. So yeah, it's time for us all to get under their skin and let our voices heard and bring back the vision of, getting this country back on track. As Karen and I both we all live in California. I always refer to I'm a native Californian, and I say it's time to take California back to the golden glory days when California was best in everything. I mean, it's best in everything. We have the best weather. We have fabulous people, and we are definitely dealing with a bunch of silliness, and it's time for us to flip that switch and have the ship righted and common sense to come back into place.
Unfortunately, the destiny of California is the destiny of the rest of the nation, as we're the 5th largest economy in the world. So what happens in our state, if it starts collapsing and the problems that we've been discussing with congressmen continue, it's going to be a much more massive fallout. So I'm calling on people in California and New York, where we've got some of the biggest voting bases and we've got the biggest economies, to just look at your own community and try to figure out what you can do, because this will affect the entire world, not just our country, if these states continue to go in the wrong direction. And you had something to say, Karen?
Yeah, I just wanted to piggyback on what you both just said. And I think that the people that live in California are a completely different breed than a lot of the other individuals throughout the country. And if there's any state that can fix itself, or if there's any group of people that can get change handled, it is the people of California. They know, we know we've been there, we've been great, and we're going to get back to it. We're all figuring out what has just gone on, and we're going to make it work. We're committed. We are going to make this state great again. And I just know it can be done.
Well, America is still the greatest country on earth. People are dying every day to get here. Millions of people are coming over our borders. So don't let the politicians convince you that this is the worst place that's ever existed. We're the most racist. We're the most selfish, you name it, we're accused of being it, then why do people still want to come here? That's my question. Why are people dying every day? Why are people using their entire life savings when they know their children and themselves are probably going to get raped here on the 1,000-mile journey? Don't let people convince you that what we have isn't one of the greatest experiments mankind has ever partaken in. So with that, I'm going to kind of do my closing. So as we experience the uncertainty and turmoil in society today, people can feel helpless when it comes to bringing about change in their community, their governments, and the societal structures that rule our lives today. Due to the massive size of our government and corruption, the solutions are not simple. As President Kennedy once said, man created his own problems, therefore he can fix his own problems. This is a call to action for anyone out there who wants to work out new solutions with their neighbors to create the world that they want to live in. A large percentage of the country believes we are headed in the wrong direction. Just imagine what would happen if each of those people would have a game plan to implement positive change in their community. Right now, 25 to 30% of the US population volunteers. Let's increase that to 60% and see what can go on in our communities. The future is bright and it's full of promise. It's time to make the positive changes happen. Again, this is a call to action for all of you out there. As always, this presentation is made in hopes that never again will the truth be lost in translation. Please do your own research and come to your own conclusions. Thank you for listening. And this is Simone signing off for today.